All right, welcome to this week's edition of the Carl Jackson Show. I'm glad you could join me today, guys. We have so much to talk about. This is going to be a bang-up show. The Republicans have made some great moves, some incredible moves this week. We will have to wait and see what comes as a result of them, but I like the way that I see some of them starting to fight. Obviously, the big news this week thus far has been the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, has announced an impeachment inquiry into Joseph R. Biden. You may know him as Robert L. Wares, or Robert L. Peters, JRB Wares, or Robert Wares. Those were some of the acronyms that the President of the United States were using to sell out the country. But also, there are a couple of other things that Republicans have talked about this week, in case you missed it, that I think are extremely important. We're also going to be joined with our guest, Evita-Duffy Alonso from the Federalist. She'll be joining us for a couple of blocks on today's show. But let me start here. I want to start with Speaker McCarthy. And Speaker McCarthy is fighting for the impeachment inquiry. And right now, he's getting the support of many of the big names as far as senators are concerned. I'm very, very glad to hear about that, because that is extremely important. We know that the Biden crime family is extremely corrupt. For those of us that are on the right and that have been paying attention, there has been a list of things that the Biden family has done that is absolutely insane, when you have so many people out there saying, listen, there is no evidence for impeachment. There's plenty of evidence for impeachment. I will outline some of those things that the House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer has written about or has detailed on the website of the House Oversight Committee. But here's what I don't want to see before we get to video that we have of the speaker. Here's what I'm hoping we don't see, or what I don't want to see, and that is, just because the Speaker of the House is now open to an impeachment inquiry. And guys, if we're being fair, if we're being honest, this impeachment, listen, we're not going to get the Senate to impeach. That's not going to happen. But let me tell you why I believe this is an important fight anyway, because the vast majority of voters are not paying attention to the primaries as of yet. A lot of the news that we hear about and that we've been talking about as conservatives for quite some time has not made it out into the mainstream ether. CNN, MSNBC, they're not talking, NPR, they're not talking about the Biden corruption. They're not talking about the Hunter Biden laptop stories. So that's why this is extremely, extremely important. So for those of you that are saying, listen, there's no evidence that exists, there's plenty of evidence that exists. But here's what we have to make sure of too. We have to make sure that at the end of this month, there is a budget battle to be had. Speaker McCarthy, even though I'm very impressed with this, must fight to close our borders or secure our borders, must fight to end this weaponization and the corrupting of our DOJ and FBI, and to end government censorship. This has to stop. We elected, or we put Speaker McCarthy in office in the position that he's in order to fight for us, we the people. So I'm just hoping that this impeachment inquiry will not be just a bone or some crumbs that he throws at our feet, at conservatives' feet, and says, okay, hey, I've given you this, but we're not going to fight on these bigger issues. No. Contraire, mon frere, we must fight this budget battle. Let's play this video. This is the speaker. I'm sure you've seen this already, but we're going to play it again to refresh your memory. This is Speaker Kevin McCarthy announcing that an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden is warranted and will begin.
Today, I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. This logical next step will give our committees the full power to gather all the facts and answers for the American public. That's exactly what we want to know, the answers. I believe the president would want to answer these questions and allegations as well.
All right, so that was Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. announcing earlier this week, announcing the impeachment inquiry. Now, for those of you that might say, Carl, there is no need for this. This is absolutely crazy. This is just politics. Actually, what I fear is that, yeah, it could be politics, but I'm hoping not on Speaker Kevin McCarthy's part. Again, I'm hoping that this just isn't a bone he's trying to throw to conservatives as a gesture of saying, listen, I'll do this, but I'm not going to fight this budget battle, which has to be had. Nonetheless, let's go over here's some reminders from House Oversight Committee James Comer, or some examples of the Biden family's influence peddling scheme. Number one, in July of 2023, you had former Biden business associate Devin Archer described how Joe Biden was, quote, the brand, close quote, and was used to send signals of power, access, and influence to enrich the Biden family from foreign sources. All right, so he goes into great detail. Number two, Devin Archer alone was aware of at least 20 times in which then VP Biden spoke on speakerphone with Hunter Biden's foreign business associates. Democrats would have Americans believe that these phone calls with then VP were simply to discuss the weather. We know that is not the case. And listen, make no mistake about it, this business belonged to Joe Biden. Okay, if anything, what you had was Hunter Biden running Joe Biden's business. No one is going to give a crackhead millions and millions and millions of dollars if they did not believe that they wouldn't have access to his dad, then VP Joe Biden. And number three, third example, in February of 2014, then VP Joe Biden dined with oligarchs from both Russia and Kazakhstan who funneled millions of dollars to Hunter Biden and his business associates. Again, all of these examples come with details. I will put those up on my Twitter space. All you have to do is go to at the Carl Jackson Show, wherever I am on social media, whether that's Twitter, whether that's Truth Social, Facebook, Instagram, you get the point. Then Vice President Biden, number five, had coffee with Hunter Biden's Chinese business associates, Jonathan Lee of BHR in Beijing, and wrote a college letter of recommendation for his daughter. Number six, in 2015, then VP Biden hosted Hunter Biden and Devin Archer and other business associates at the official residence of then Vice President Joe Biden. The topic of discussion was filling the top seat at the UN. The Kazakhstani government official who wanted the UN position attended both dinners at Cafe Milano with then VP Joe Biden. Guys, the list goes on and on and on. This is just number six. There are 22 examples at least. Not to mention, you have 150 SARS reports where the Biden family were getting money in from all over the world. They had these accounts open. They had these LLCs, approximately 20 LLCs, but they're not running any business. Well, except they are. And that is the influence peddling scheme. That's why Joe Biden couldn't afford a 67 Corvette. That's why he could afford mansions. But I want to make it emphatically clear, yet again, that this will not be enough. This is a great start from Republicans. Another Republican has come out and talked about EVs. I'm going to explain to you why that is an important fight to have. Especially, you'll get it more so once we speak to our guest coming up shortly, Evita-Duffy Alfonso. You're going to absolutely love this guest. This young conservative woman is on fire, well informed, and is a fighter for the constitutional and conservative movement in the United States of America. But again, this will not be enough. It is time, and we'll play more video for you later in the program, but it is time to stop this nonsense from the left. It is time to stop the open borders. It's time to secure them. It is time to stop this weaponization of the DOJ and the corruption of the DOJ. I was privileged to sit on a Twitter space kind of call with Enrique Tarrio, the Proud Boys, right after he was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Absolute nonsense. He was not even in Washington, D.C. at the time. He warned all of us that were on that Twitter space that not only did they try to coerce him to turn against former President Donald Trump, but he is convinced, he is absolutely convinced that, sadly, Donald Trump will be in a jail cell. He absolutely believes that. I hope he's wrong, but he absolutely believes it. This is something that we have to correct. And the guy was such a patriot. He was frustrated and concerned that we were focusing so much on his plight and on J6 and being distracted by that, just like the Democrats want. And it is an issue we should constantly talk about. Don't get me wrong. But this guy, this is what he said. We're not talking about gas and inflation and groceries, all of the things that that the American people need to hear in order for Joe Biden to lose. So, and the government censorship. You're going to explain, you're going to understand why government censorship is so crucial. It is so bad. And we've got to make sure that we stop this big tech, big government collusion together because it's hurting us. We'll be back with Evita-Duffy. All right, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. I am joined with my guest, or by my guest, Evita-Duffy Alonso. She is with the Federalist, and she has been writing some fabulous columns for the Federalist. I have to admit, Evita, I am so impressed by your intelligence, your maturity. These articles that you're writing are so, I mean, they're so in depth and they're so informative. I'm really honored to have you on the program today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so here's a column that you've written somewhat recently that I love to talk about because I don't think many Americans are, and I think this is extremely important. It's really scary. It almost sounds conspiratorial, but nothing seems like a conspiracy theory anymore to me, Evita. It seems like, I mean, we're just living in a crazy world, but you wrote a column, this was in mid-August approximately, entitled, "These 14 American Cities Have a Target of Banning Meat, Dairy, and Private Vehicles by the year 2030. So I want to talk about that. I'll just read some of the summary here, if you will, and then I'll just ask you some questions, some follow-up questions. But you start off by saying, Evita, or writing, 14 major American cities are part of a globalist climate organization known as the C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group, which has an ambitious target, you say in quotes, quote unquote, by the year of 2030. That's 0 kilograms of meat consumption, 0 kilograms of dairy consumption, 3 new clothing items per person per year, 0 private vehicles, and 1 short haul return flight less than 1,500 kilometers every 3 years per person. And I honestly don't know the difference between kilometers and miles, so forgive me when it comes to that stuff. But the meat consumption, let's start there, Evita. This is absolutely insane to me. This is so evil. I can't believe there's people out there that really buy into this stuff and want to impose this stuff on people, but there are.
Well, it's truly shocking. I think a lot of the left has tried to label the right as conspiracy theorists for saying that they want to get rid of meat, for saying that they want us to eat bugs. And lo and behold, their goals are written down explicitly by them. So the C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group, it's a Michael Bloomberg run organization. It's made up of only almost 100 cities across the globe. 14 of them are American. Many of them are left-wing cities. Most of them are left-wing cities. And the purpose of C40 is to implement these radical climate goals, like getting rid of meat, which they say that, you know, the production of beef and poultry is too taxing on the environment. They say that to do this, they're going to help the environment, and they want to get around the normal means of implementing these kind of measures. So instead of having to go to a state legislature or even go to Congress, they're saying we're going to do this with this agreement between us cities, because the cities, these global massive cities, actually control a large portion of the global economy and the global population. And so they're able to really push the radical climate goals without having to ask for the consent of the people. And that's really where this gets truly nefarious.
Yeah, this is that's an excellent point, Evita, and that is my concern. I feel as though, I mean, literally, our state legislatures have very little power when it comes to this. Our Congress has very little power. Seemingly, it seems to me that they've given up a lot of their authority in Congress, which is absolutely insane. And these guys have kind of come in, the George Soroses of the World Economic Forum, and these global elitists, which, quite frankly, Evita, I'm sorry, I got to tell you, just a few years ago, I didn't even allow callers to call into my show and say stuff like that, because I was just like, you're nuts. And then the lockdowns, I don't say a COVID pandemic, I know it was a pandemic, but the lockdowns were imposed upon us. And then I was like, oh my Lord, there are some, I knew, obviously I'm a Christian, I knew there were evil people out there, but it was so eye-opening to me. It's unbelievable. But no meat, no dairy, 3 new clothing items per person per year. The audacity of these people. There's going to be a lot of ladies out there that are going nuts with three 3 items of clothing per year. Am I wrong, Evita?
No, I think it's really quite dystopian. I think nobody is going to be happy in this new world order. The WEF famously said, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And of course, you're not going to be, because essentially what these elitists at the World Economic Forum, at the UN, and at the C40C's climate group, which they're all really in conjunction. The lines are blurred between which organization is which.
Sure.
The people are going to really be poor, and really they're creating a slave underclass with these goals, because the reality is, if you ban meat, if you ban dairy, which are highly protein dense, caloric foods that people really need to survive, people will end up dying. And so when we talk about these things and we tell others the goals of these people, but not just the goals, the underlying goals, which in my opinion is depopulation and then total control over the masses. People, the climate organizations and their partners in big tech get really, really angry. So I actually posted a video about this article where I sort of condensed it into a 1-minute Instagram reel. And Instagram put a false label and a PolitiFact fact check on it to shut me up about it.
This is another fight that must be had by Congress. I really don't understand, or honestly, I don't see, quite frankly, 2024. I think it's going to be a much harder fight than a lot of people expect, despite the fact, that Joe Biden has been an absolutely horrible president. But if we don't get rid of this big tech tyranny, this big tech censorship, it is a huge problem. Let me go to this: zero private vehicles. I know the many on the left and even some Republicans are into this. They're trying to move people into EVs. You have the state of California that essentially has their own laws when it comes to EVs, and you have 16 or 17 other states that are kind of allowed to tag on. But I believe this is what EVs are doing. I believe that the powers that be, if you will, want to control people. They can do that when people are in EVs. They can shut down the grid. They control where you go, how far you go, so on, et cetera. But ultimately, I think this, too, and having no private vehicles is just a way to wipe out people's freedom and control them. What say you, Evita?
No, I mean, that's entirely the goal, because what will happen if you don't have private vehicle ownership is you'll constrain people's freedom of movement, and you'll be able to either shut down the transportation if you don't want somebody to move, or really be able to track them wherever they go. And what's interesting about this is they like to say all of this is in the name of climate, right? That we want people to have a sustainable, climate-friendly way of getting around, and that's not private vehicles. It's just too much, CO2 into the atmosphere. But the people at the World Economic Forum and at the UN and at the C40C's climate group, they have no problem not only having their own private vehicles and gas guzzling, climate taxing mansions, but they fly private jets all over the world. Ironically, they fly private jets to the climate conferences where they discuss stopping regular people from flying commercial. So the irony speaks to the true goals of these individuals. It has nothing to do with the environment and everything to do with social control.
Another thing that I'm taken aback by, Evita, and we only have a couple of minutes here before our first break here, or our break. But I'm taken aback by the person that's in charge of, or is funding this, Michael Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg, obviously, what is it? Every town for gun safety, basically his foundation that undermines Second Amendment rights, in the United States. And now he's funding this. You list the cities that are included. Some of them come as no surprise, but a couple do to me. Austin, Boston, Chicago, Houston. Actually, I know it's liberal, but that kind of surprised me. Los Angeles, Miami kind of surprised me because we have a Republican, even though he's pretty much a Democrat, but even still. New Orleans, New York City, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Portland, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. Oh, also Seattle. So this is occurring right here in the United States. It's already underway.
Yeah, so I brought this up in the article, but when I was fact checked by the censors on Instagram, they said, well, this is their target, this is their ambitious target, right? No meat, no dairy, no private vehicles, but nobody's actually implemented any sort of policy to do this. This is not laws that are being enacted or a treaty that this will happen. It's just a goal. It's just our, really benign sort of, normal goal that we have. Well, it's not. First of all, if this wasn't really what they wanted, they wouldn't call it an ambitious target. They wouldn't have written it down in the first place. So obviously they want this to happen. But we're also already seeing the goals come into fruition in cities like New York City, where Eric Adams has banned meat and dairy for prisons and public schools, something that he has control over. In France, that they have limits on air travel. And in the UK, they have a ban on gas-powered vehicles by 2030. We already are seeing these goals come into fruition. And so we cannot allow them to gaslight us into thinking that this is not actually the reality.
All right, we're gonna take a break. More with Evita-Duffy Alfonso on the other side. All right, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. Again, I'm joined with my guest, Evita-Duffy Alfonso. She is with the Federalist. Make sure you check out her columns. I mean, this young woman is wise beyond her years. The same is true with Sean Fleetwood that writes for the Federalist. I am impressed. I am so honestly. You give me hope, Evita. You really do give me hope. I mean that in all sincerity, because we need young people like you that understand what America is, what America should be, and the threats to America. You are one of those people. So I am so grateful for you. Before we went to the break, you were talking about Mayor Eric Adams and what he's already doing in places like New York City, the UK as well. They've banned their new gas-powered vehicles after 2030. France has banned short-haul flights already. We're already seeing this. And then if we consider the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset, I mean, all of this stuff seems to be coming to fruition.
Yeah, it is. And I want to say about the WEF and the UN and also, the C40C's Climate Leadership Group. It can feel very difficult for us when we hear these stories and we think about their plans and look at how much power these people seem to have amassed and the lack of representation that we have in Davos and the places where these policy prescriptions are being drawn up. And it can be easy to just, go into nihilism and say this is the end. We might as well just give up trying. But the truth is that as bad as the WEF is, and as bad as Klaus Schwab is, and Michael Bloomberg is, these climate goals cannot really be implemented in the United States if our own representatives don't take them on. And so that's why even local, state and local elections, like your city mayor, which are the ones that are part of C40, are so important, because the WEFs and the goals cannot come to fruition without the representation being on board with that, which means that our vote still matters in that sense. And so as long as we're organizing and talking about these issues and saying, hey, this candidate will be a part of C40 if he's elected, or has a track record of having partnerships with globalists at the WEF, we can actually affect change and protect ourselves from these entities.
You know what, Evita, that is such a great point. I can tell you here, I live in Central Florida, and in a place called Collier County, Flagler Beach area. There are there's city commissioners that basically they have just made Collier County what they call a Bill of Rights sanctuary. And that is whatever the federal government throws at them that are unconstitutional, whatever Tallahassee even throws at them, if it's unconstitutional, they will not comply. They will take them to court. So I would say she is absolutely right. Local elections still matter. You can kind of build yourself a cocoon. Everyone from the mayor, the school board, county commissioners, city commissioners, these people are you don't realize how much power they have locally and how much power you have locally. So a very, very good point. Here's some of the things that are happening, Evita. Again, you'll own nothing and you will be happy. We know that's what the World Economic Forum believes. But you see, as you've written about in this column, hedge funds and billionaires are buying up residential homes. They are buying up farmlands. Buying up residential homes obviously is going to make it extremely difficult for first-time buyers to get in homes, not to mention the inflation, the interest rates that we're seeing right now. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I actually really want to speak to the farmland issue, because that is being bought up by Chinese business owners who are, of course, beholden to the CCP, also by Bill Gates. What are they doing with all of our farmland? Because when we talk about banning meat in C40 cities, well, there might be no meat to go around at all if we don't have small farmers able to produce meat. And right now, you're seeing two things really come at small farmers and farmers. One of them is the entities at the WEF and at C40 cities who do not want farmers to continue to produce meat and poultry for Americans. This is reflected at the Dutch farmers' revolt, where we're seeing, the Netherlands actually say that their goal is to shut down farms in the name of protecting the environment. But we also see there's giant corporations who have a vested interest in controlling the meat market. And so you have 4 companies, they're called the Big Four, that control all of the meat processing in America, 85% of it. And that is just pure corporate greed. We need to, in your state and at the local level, do what you can to support small farmers, taking away regulations that allow them to thrive and not have to sell their farms to these entities like Bill Gates, like the CCP, or these other giant meat packaging corporations, because food is really such an important part of us staying independent and healthy in the face of all of these globalist entities that really truly seek to destroy us.
Very well said, and so are, quite frankly, so are fossil fuels. I mean, the fact that fossil fuels provide cheap, reliable energy. I mean, quite frankly, in the last several years, cars were, as far as carbon emissions are concerned, and I got to be frank with you, I really don't think that carbon emissions are the threat that many people claim. Photosynthesis, this is what I learned growing up. I mean, plants eat up the CO2, plants thrive, more plants. I mean, we're not going to get rid of these natural energy sources God has created, so we can use them, and we can use them safely and wisely, and we were. But fossil fuels are cheap, they're affordable. The World Economic Forum wants to get away with things, with those. They want to use EVs that are very highly toxic. Your response?
Yeah, so it's really interesting to look at the numbers because the climate-related deaths related to climate disasters have decreased since the emergence of gas-powered vehicles and other mechanisms that use fossil fuels, and this is because fossil fuels allow people to have alert systems for when a storm or a tornado is coming. They also allow people to shelter in their homes and have heating and cooling and all of the things that really we need to survive against the elements. So to remove fossil fuels from the environment actually makes people more vulnerable. And I'll also say that we are experiencing a global greening due to the fossil fuels, which some have also theorized is part of why there are less climate disasters in general, not just less climate deaths. So the issue is complicated. The climate is always changing. To say that we're going to get rid of fossil fuels for insufficient levels of wind and solar energy is asinine in terms of protecting people. But that's the point. This isn't about protecting people. It is about really hurting people, because ultimately that's what all of their goals end up doing. It ends up making people vulnerable. It ends up making people poor, and really will lead to death. And this is not a conspiracy theory. Look at what happened in Sri Lanka when the WEF implemented all of its climate goals, and the entire country collapsed into complete chaos.
You wrote as well about a Dr. Matthew, I believe it's pronounced Lau, that's proposed the idea of scientists genetically modifying humans to be allergic to meat. This is insane.
Yes, yeah. So there are. I mean, this is a proposal. This hasn't happened yet. But because they want to control people's food intake so much, control really everything about your life, they say, well, if we can't actually stop you from eating meat, then we'll make you allergic to meat so that you can't actually eat it, and that way we'll be able to get rid of it and be able to protect the environment. This is very dystopian. It's very disturbing. And what's interesting, and this is actually a very important point, the UN, the WEF, and the C40C's climate leadership, what do they value the most? They value trust. And they say that all the time. That's why they engage in so many censorship campaigns. That's why they feel the need to shut down conversations like this. If they can't maintain trust, then it's much more difficult for them to carry out their goals. And that's why this conversation is so important, because it undermines the trust that people have. As soon as somebody hears that they want to make you allergic to meat, alarm bells go off. People think, well, this is really Orwellian, and the trust begins to decrease. That is the front lines of this entire battle, is just exposing them for their goals and undermining people's trust in them.
Man, I got to tell you, Evita, you are kicking butt. You are very up on so many of these issues. I'm so glad to have you here. Listen, we only have just 40 seconds before the break. I mean, the time has just passed so quickly here. Is it possible in 30 seconds to kind of tell us what went wrong last year in the midterm elections as far as the RNC compared to the DNC on college campuses?
Yeah, absolutely. So the DNC has been great at grassroots organizing on college campuses. They've done this for years now. They actually, and somewhat illegally, bribe students. We can talk about that another time. And Republicans have done nothing to reach out to them. They've essentially seceded them to the left, and that cannot happen. They need to be present on college campuses, and they need to be talking about issues that young voters care about, particularly the economy.
All right. Evita, thank you so much. We appreciate you. Really do. All right, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Evita-Duffy Alfonso. Guys, I'll get used to the clocks. I'm used to rambling a little bit on radio. They are trying to keep me confined with this television/podcast show. And listen, it's only going to make me better. So I appreciate that. But I hope you appreciated the interview with Evita-Duffy Alfonso. I mean, she is a wealth full of knowledge. I encourage you to go to the Federalist and check out her columns. Obviously, below you should have been able to see where you can follow her on social media. So please be sure to do just that. Guys, there's a couple of more issues that I want to talk to you about. Again, We've talked about Biden corruption. We've talked about the need for impeachment, but I spoke about this in the first block. But also, what I didn't want to happen is I don't want us to become complacent as conservatives and constitutionalists. I don't want us to, simply because Kevin McCarthy is throwing this bone, and perhaps listen, I think that the impeachment inquiry needs to happen as we get further and further into the election cycle. I am under no illusion that Joe Biden is going to be impeached, but I think the impeachment inquiry is necessary. For one, I think it needs to be on the record, and quite frankly, he could be impeached in the House. Let me say that it won't go beyond that. But I still think it's important, simply because we need for people to hear this information and what the media has been covering up. Are you guys aware that literally the White House reached out to the media and basically telling the media, you guys need to squash this? Guys, this is not the United States of America. This is not the United States of America. All right, so the budget battle is coming up. This is going to be extremely important. I talked to you guys about that in the first block, and how it is time for the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, to make sure that he uses the power of the purse as leverage. He must use the power of the purse to secure the border, to stop this nonsense with the weaponized DOJ. If you have to defund the FBI, whatever you have to do until we get someone in there, Lord willing, in 2024 that can bust these things up, you should be busting them up monetarily. You should be making them weak. The same is true when it comes to big tech censorship, government censorship. This has to end. Whatever leverage we can use with the power of the purse, Speaker Kevin McCarthy must use, or he must go. I'm sorry, the impeachment inquiry is not going to be enough. Having said that, I want to cue up our first video in this block, and that is Representative Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, telling us exactly what needs to happen when it comes to fighting this budget battle. Let's go ahead and roll the gate.
Today is about the American people. We're not here to talk about brinksmanship. No one is here interested in a pause in government funding. What we're interested in is taking the Biden boot off the neck of the American people. In the 5 weeks I've been gone, just give you a quick summary. Card check rolling out of the Department of Labor. The Department of Justice, of course, continues to prosecute their political enemies while leaving criminals run rampant across our streets. The president disrespected and insulted the people of Hawaii after their houses were burned down. Alejandro Mayorkas is literally daring us to impeach him. He can't be bothered with whatever the law says. The people that I represent, American citizens, are now being forced to compete against workers, people coming illegally in the form of hundreds of thousands every single month across our southern border. The people in the city that I represent, the capital city of Harrisburg, are dying from fentanyl this week, and there's not a damn thing being done about it. Not a damn thing being done about it. We are sick of the theater. We're tired of the Washington theater. Go home and tell them anything. Tell them we're working for them and all that stuff. Nothing we're doing is changing their lives. A government that tells you you can't buy the stove you want or drive the car you want is a government of tyranny, and there's no freedom in America. We're not interested in a continuing resolution that continues the policies and the spending of the Biden, Schumer, Pelosi era, and we're not going to vote for it. We didn't vote for it last December, and we're not going to vote for it now. So we're here to tell you the American people are sick of it. They can't afford their electricity bill, they can't afford the gas bill, and they damn sure can't afford the grocery bill. We're here to put our foot down and say to this place right here, it stops now. The power of the purse is in the legislature. And the way you stop all this craziness of the Biden administration, the tyranny of the Biden administration, is to stop giving them money.
Okay, listen, I couldn't have said it any better myself. Thank God for Representative Scott Perry that is fighting on this fight. He's absolutely right. Now is the time. Guys, don't be scared about these talks of government shutdown. I'm not trying to minimize a government shutdown or a partial government shutdown, but there's a reason. There's a reason why both those on the left and the right are afraid of a government shutdown. And it's not for the reasons it's not for the reasons that you believe. The reason that the left and the right are scared of a government shutdown is because so many people will realize just how massive big government and unnecessary big government is. All of the essential programs will continue. We will fund our veterans affairs. We will fund the military, Social Security, all of the entitlements, Social Security, you name it, Medicare, Medicaid, all of these will continue to be funded. All of the essential jobs will continue to be funded. Now, it is true that payments will be furloughed for a time being while a quote unquote shutdown occurs, but all of these people will get back pay. But essentially, the people, the essential workers and the federal government will continue to work. All of these services, post office even, will continue to run. Over 70% of government will continue to run. So do not let them scare you. This is the time to fight. It is now or never. We cannot continue to we cannot continue to just spend and spend and spend and drive down the value of the dollar and bankrupt a future generation of kids. This is absolutely wrong. It is now or never. And again, it is time to leverage the power of the purse. That's what Speaker McCarthy was given the job for. Trump endorsed him to do just that. I believe he needs to get it done. It is time to use whatever power he can with the power of the purse to secure our borders, to put a dent in this corrupt DOJ and FBI and stop with this government censorship. Now is the time to do it. We don't have any more time to waste. We can't say, let's keep pushing this down the road. It simply cannot happen. I wanted to show you another video. We don't have time for the sake of the show, but I do want to share a couple of things with you. I have been impressed with some of the things that we've seen. What Evita-Duffy Alonso was talking about in the second and third block of the program. Guys, this stuff sounded crazy just a few years ago. And then the COVID lockdowns happened. And now we see how far these fascists within our own government, starting with Joseph R. Biden, are willing to go. This guy is compromised. He's sold out our country, but he's connected with these global elites, whether World Economic Forum and all of these guys. These guys are sick puppies that we are dealing with. So the fact that we're now willing to fight against EVs, this is a very important battle. People don't talk about this, but had tipped this from Fox News, the California electric vehicle mandate, or Republicans force a floor vote reversing California's electrical vehicle mandate. This is extremely important. You should have your choice as to what type of vehicle you would like to buy. All right. And that is a very important point to a very important fight. These EVs, they are not sufficient. They are not efficient, I should say. It's hard to find charging stations. I know Biden wants to spend another $100 million. Those batteries are highly corrosive. They're not good for long distance trips. So the House is set to vote on the so-called Preserving Choice in Vehicle Purchases Act, authored by Representative John Joyce is his name, another Republican from Pennsylvania. He introduced this in March, but the legislation enacted would block the EPA from issuing waivers to states seeking to ban or limit internal combustion engines. States like California's, and there's others. I think there's 16 or 17 states that glom on to California, and basically they cover 40% of the new car market. Or car sales. We can't have that. These industries will totally have to cater to these woke states when these EVs aren't doing anything to save the planet. As a matter of fact, they're involved in, again, the corrosive batteries, child labor in the Congo, so on, etc. Deplorable conditions. So that stinks. But also this, we had another Republican that stood up and said, Tom Renner, I'm shocked, to be frank with you, that said we're not going to have these CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies that will allow the federal government to track and control every penny you earn and save. These CBDCs will tax your money. Tax money that you saved. CBDCs will enable devious social engineering. That's what the federal government wants to do. Use your money to control your behavior. And we have Republicans that are starting to see this and stand up. And for that, I am grateful. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in today. And until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.